Following the biggest offseason of moves and acquisitions by General Manager Howie Roseman, the expectations of this city have never been higher. Welcome to the 2022 Lehocky Postgame Show on 6abc.com and across the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel, exclusively presented by Lehocky Giordano. Live from the Gallery Bar, booking games inside Ocean Casino Resort. Let's get this postgame show underway. EAGLES, Eagles.
Well, what does 6-0 taste like? It tastes pretty good, and it's got a sweet Dallas aftertaste. Yes, the Eagles win 26-17. Welcome to the Lehocky Eagles postgame show, and what a night. I'm Mike Missinelli with Derek Gunn, Seth Joyner, well, Devin Caney joining us later. The Eagles, again, in the first half, the second quarter dominance, they take a 20-0 lead in this game, and they kind of survive in the second half, and that's the way it works. The Eagles are they're one of those teams that just can't be flustered. When you think they're on the ropes, and they were kind of on the ropes in the second half, they forge a monster drive to get to that go-ahead touchdown to make it 26-17, even though there was a questionable decision on the point after touchdown. and then they make a great defensive play with Brandon Graham getting in Cooper Rush's face, and they get the interception. I mean, I don't know what more to say. They have made every right play. They scare you a little bit in the second half with their lack of efficiency, but they win.
Mike, what a weekend to be a Philadelphia sports fan. I mean, the Phillies are in the NLCS. The Flyers are off to a 2-0 start, and the Eagles go to their bye week, a perfect 6-0, the only undefeated team in the National Football League. Was it a perfect game? By no stretch of the imagination was it a perfect game, but when you talk about a rivalry like this against two teams that have been streaking in the right direction, it's not going to be perfect. But luckily for the Eagles, they had more perfection in their game than the Dallas Cowboys did.
You know, as imperfect of a game as football is, you know, I just have to resign myself to the fact that the game is more imperfect now than it's ever been. And just be happy for the fact that the Eagles are 6-0. You know, I mean, I'm tired of fighting with people on social media about, you know, the analytical side. See, I'm not a fanboy. I want the Eagles to do well, but I'm not a fanboy. I'm an analyst. That's what I do. I analyze the game. I break down what I see that's right and what I see that's wrong, and where I think, you know, the improvements need to be made. You know, but the game is so imperfect. It's imperfect from a technical standpoint. It's imperfect from a fundamental standpoint. It's imperfect from an integrity standpoint. And, you know, the team who can traverse that the best each and every week, this is the new NFL, is the team that wins.
And that's
so you know what? Kudos,
really,
Eagles.
That's exactly.
Kudos, Eagles, for being 6-0.
Wait, you're conceding?
Yes.
I never thought I would, Mike.
Look,
I never thought I would hear Seth say he's
right.
conceded.
This is exactly what they are. They're a team that really, you know, you expect letdowns from other Eagle teams. You expect, like, here's a game. They're ready to play. They get out to a 20-0 lead. They hold Dallas, 81 yards in the first half. They're always ready when the bell rings. And something happens in the second half. I get it. The other team, you have to allow, I guess, for a little attrition, you got to allow for adjustments from the other team. And Dallas adjusted a little bit. Cooper Rush, who was way outclassed in the first half, they started to mix the run with the pass. He settled down a little bit, and they made it a game. But you know, you never look at this team like they're going to collapse totally. And when a score gets to 2017, what happens? They have a drive that takes them out of harm's way.
Well, when you look at this team across the board, especially offensively, they are the most explosive offense in the National Football League. I said on our pregame show earlier today, when I looked at the numbers, the Eagles had 58 plays. When I'm talking about pass plays of 16 yards or more, running plays of 10 yards or more. They by far led the National Football League in that category. And even when they bogged down, just like they did in the Arizona game, all of a sudden they get the wake-up call and they put together a long drive, sustainable drive, and they punch it in the end zone. That last touchdown by Devonta Smith, and when Dallas clearly had the momentum, man, was that a much-needed sigh of relief for them to get that touchdown, and they incorporated the running game. I didn't understand the game plan to a certain degree right out of the gate. Their first series, they came out 5 passes. And then they put together that long 15-play drive.
Running the football.
Well, they only had 4 running plays on that one.
Oh, okay,
you know,
the 14, when they went up 14-0?
Yes, but at least, no, when they went up 7-0.
Okay, 7-0.
But at least they ran the ball. They gave Dallas the thought, okay, now they're going to try to pound it down our throats. And as we saw as the game wore on, once they went to the running game, we said it time and time again. If you hit Dallas between the tackles, you can run the football on them. You're not going to run on them outside. They're a smaller, faster defense.
You know, it's almost like they know what the recipe is for winning, but they still got to test the other way first. You know, let's see if we can throw it. You know, and if we can't throw it, then we'll go back to running it. I mean, it seems like that's the mode of operation all the time. I mean, they could have totally dominated this game if they would have just came out and just stuck to running the ball when they had opportunities to run the football. Again, you know, I will die on this hill. I just think, and maybe it's just my mentality, my aggressive mentality. If I've got an opponent down, I don't ever want them to have a glimmer of hope, ever. You know, so when you got Cooper Rush just, you know, shaking in his boots and just ready to, you know, throw 5 more interceptions, why would I ever stop applying pressure to him? I'm trying to look for different ways that I can continue to apply pressure to him at all times because I want him to fold like a tent. I want him to fold up. I don't want him to come out and throw for, what, 145 yards in the second half when he only had, what, 36 yards passing in the first half.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
I guess
the bootleg killed
my
the
goodness.
Eagles,
Oh,
killed
my
the Eagles with Cooper Rush. That's what they ran. They ran off the bootleg, and they made him efficient as a passer.
Again, when I talked about it, you know, in my opening comments about this being an imperfect game and us trying to figure out, you know, the analysis for it to be perfect. Okay, they're so fundamentally unsound because every single time that motion goes away from Josh Sweat or Hassan Reddick, they chase down the line. And here comes the bootleg.
Yeah.
You know, and then the bootleg throwback to the tight end, you can see that coming, you know, a mile away because they boot, and then all of a sudden they don't send the tight end out to the flat no more. They send him and take him across the field, and while everybody's running out to the flat, he's screaming up the left side of the field all by himself.
That was definitely a flaw. Now, let's look, though, at they neutralized Micah Parsons in the first half. Speak to that and how they did it. And then that would turn around because Lane Johnson goes out, and we hope he's okay, but he's in concussion protocol, we understand.
Yes.
So what did they do against Micah Parsons in the first half?
Well, you know, when you run RPOs and you run read option, it really comes down to a numbers thing, you know. So they just made a decision that if they were going to option off of Micah Parsons, then Micah Parsons, they just weren't going to block him. They were like, let's block everybody else. He's got to make a decision. If he comes at the quarterback, we're going to hand it off right now. If he takes the dive or he hesitates, we'll just hand it off. And then there's this gap because he's got to stay where he is, and the tackle's blocking down. So there's this gap between the tackle and where Micah Parsons is. So when you hand it off, even if you hand it off, he can't react to it fast enough to really shut it down. So they really made some hay off of that because I give the coaches a lot of credit because to be able to notice that you can put that guy in conflict from a numbers perspective was absolutely genius. Absolutely genius.
So Lane Johnson goes out, and we were looking at it and said, listen, Driscoll's no match for Micah Parsons. So they actually readjusted, and they ran the football. And that on that drive where they went up 26-17, which was an adjustment they had to make because Micah Parsons was going crazy at that point.
Again, it's so much easier when you have a guy that has to step in for the normal starters. It's easier to run the football. I mean, just the fact that Lane was out. All of a sudden, you got Micah that lined up on the right tackle exclusively when he was just moving all over the place. Now he lined up exclusively there. They knew they had a mismatch, and they were taking advantage of it until the Eagles made a decision that, hey, we're going to run the football, and we're going to take this guy out of it again. You either run it to protect your quarterback. I've said it before. You either run it to protect him, or you better put a back over there to chip, or you better put a tight end over there to help him out. They don't like to do that. So if you're not going to do that, the only way you're going to keep your quarterback healthy is you better run the darn football.
This was a mirror image of the Arizona game. They did the exact same thing last week. They get away from the run game. They allow Arizona to get back in the game, and they make it too close for comfort. Luckily for them, they came out on the winning side of the ledger. When you look at this game, I don't understand why at times this offense plays into the defense's hands. I don't get that at all. You have a chance to put this team away and embarrass them on national TV. Now, I understand we want to be entertained to a certain degree, and I'm hoping they learn their lessons from this. But like Seth said, as we're watching the game, there's two things that kept jumping out. Run the football more, number one, and why are the Eagles' defensive ends more disciplined on their bootleg that Cooper Rush was running the entire second half to get him back in the game?
Hey, wait a minute.
I can't sit here and complain anymore, though.
I'm not complaining. It's an
Twitter don't want to hear that, D-Gun.
Look, I don't care.
Twitter
what
won't hear. It ain't me tonight. It's this guy.
I understand.
Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me?
It ain't. Hey, listen. The Eagles were fantastic tonight.
What?
I don't even care how they won.
I wish we were recording you upstairs watching the game. I wish we had a camera rolling upstairs.
They have not played a perfect game. I get it. But the difference between this team and other teams is they do what needs to be done to win the game, and they always have an answer.
Absolutely.
And I haven't seen that in a really long time where they take the lead and, boom, they come out roaring, and when they're pressed, they know exactly how to withstand the pressure.
They have so many different weapons. Shane Steichen is a very good play caller. It may not be consistently for a whole game, but he knows what he's doing. When he's playing chess, other people are trying to play checkers. They can't keep up with him in a lot of cases. And he knows exactly when they need to step on the gas and turn it on again. You got to give him credit. There's no such thing as a perfect team, but they're a perfect 6-0 right now.
I'm going to tell you this. As long as they find balance by running the football.
Yes.
Whatever it is that they want to do besides running the football, it's going to be there for them because they're going to have enough weapons. Listen, you played against the defense, in my opinion. I don't think they face another defense the rest of the way. That I'm afraid of what they may bring until we play them again in Dallas.
Right.
Because I don't think there's not another defense that they're going to face that has the kind of talent level that Dallas has.
Speed
and aggression. And, in the first half of this game, they made them look average at best. We talked about it. We talked about it in the pregame, Mike. DeMarcus Lawrence's comments about, we'll see, but Jalen hasn't played us. And I said, you know what? I can flip that narrative right around. Well, hell, y'all haven't played us. How's that working? So I hope when he walks out of his presser tonight that he's got some Black Crow feathers in his mouth because they certainly made him eat crow because they got whatever they wanted in the first half.
We look at this every week. Guys get hurt, and they find a way to survive it. Like C.J. Gardner-Johnson looked like he had a broken hand. He goes to the locker room, he comes back, and he makes a big play. Now, obviously, that was Brandon Graham's play.
Right.
I get it, but Opeta has to come in and play. None of these things ever hurt him.
No.
They just keep rolling along. Now, it wasn't the greatest night for Jalen Hurts. I mean, he was pretty pedestrian at 15 to 25 for 155, but he did throw for 2 touchdowns, and he made a couple of really big plays on that drive that made the score 26-17.
Talk about his quarterback rating. See, a lot of times we talk about other quarterbacks from the standpoint that, he did what he needed to do, to win the game. Okay? He had 2 offensive linemen that were out that completely changed the game plan. So, yes, his numbers are going to look pedestrian. but he didn't turn the ball over again.
No.
Okay? The other guy who came into this game with 4 touchdown passes and no interceptions walks up out of here with 3 interceptions. And our guy, he adds 2 more to his touchdown total and no interceptions. And, oh, by the way, a 104.6 quarterback rating. Okay? So let's give him credit. You know, even though the numbers aren't there, he's playing the most efficiently in every aspect of the game, whether he's throwing it or whether he's running.
Here's an example of that. If you look at the play on that drive, I keep going back to this drive that made it 26-17. They had a key 3rd down and 4, and he saw the blitz was coming, and then they backed off.
Yeah.
And he had the wherewithal to take that at
quarterback
draw
yes.
and run that for a first down. That's him processing that play.
Well, I've seen him make a couple of checks tonight. I think he made one bad run check where I saw him check into something that absolutely went nowhere. But he made 3 or 4 checks throughout the night that really, that I was impressed by, because he saw it. You could hear him barking out, changing the play, and getting the team in the right play. That's growth. That's what you want to see from your quarterback. Sometimes it's not about the numbers. The numbers will come, because when you're playing a 17-game schedule, guess what? You're going to have some games where you're going to light it up. Against Minnesota, he threw for over 300 yards. You come back tonight and you barely, what does he have? 155 yards? So what? You won the game. You're 6-0.
Well, you're talking about that 3rd down play in particular, too, on the quarterback keeper where he steps up. Give a lot of credit to the offensive line, because you look at the way the offensive line pushed to the right side, opened up the huge lane for him to run through, and he was smart enough and decisive enough to see that and take that alley and take it for a first down. That was huge on their part.
It was a tremendous play.
There's no question about it. And, again, you have backup offensive linemen in the game, but this team, and I can't say it enough, whenever backups come in the game for them, they don't miss a beat. They have a luxury of having so much depth. They had 9 offensive linemen up for this game tonight, and lo and behold, they would need most of them to finish off this game tonight.
This is a different personality team. We've seen Eagle football for a really long time. Seth, obviously, you played for a really long time. I look at now where they are. They're 6-0, and I go, somewhere along the line they have to lose the game. It's when you least expect they're going to lose it. But this team doesn't show a personality of folding to that extent where they would lose a game they're supposed to win.
My question is why, okay? They got Pittsburgh, Houston after the bye. They got Pittsburgh, Houston, Washington, Indianapolis, Green Bay, Tennessee, and then they get to the Giants. The Giants is the only team of all those teams that I just mentioned to you that really worries me right now. Is the Giants and Dallas with a healthy Dak back, okay? Those are the only teams that worry me. I mean, listen, they keep their mouth shut. No response to, the chatter that comes out of Dallas. They just go about their business, doing what they got to do, And at the end of the day, they're just winning games and doing bit by bit, getting better every day.
And that's the thing that's different.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
It's okay, though.
But I think it's the influx of players they brought in here, too.
Okay.
They brought in players that have some swagger to them. You look at a Kazir White. You look at a Hassan Reddick. You look at a Bradbury. And, of course, Darius Slay already had that when he was here. And then you look at A.J. Brown on the offensive side and what he does in terms of enhancing that swag. You have some players here that are super confident. And you look at the different ways they have found ways to win games. They walk out of a locker room confident that somehow, some way, we're going to finish what we start. It may be inconsistent along the way, but when we have to get it done, we're going to get it done on both sides of the football. They're going to score the necessary touchdown. They're going to get the necessary defensive stop. There's a reason why they are the number 1 defense in the league in terms of creating turnovers, one of the top 5 rushing teams in the NFL, and one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL. That's all goes back to that swagger and confidence.
I tell you what, so I'm going to give – listen, you can't win without horses. You can't win without good players. And they certainly have much better talent than what they had last year, okay? But I'm going to give some props, and I'm going to give I'm going to give props to Nick Sirianni. The way he handles this team. It's hard pressed for me sometimes to watch this defense, and because I see how great they can be, and yet at times I kind of feel like they get held back from the greatness that's there, before them. I mean, how many more interceptions could a guy like Darius Slay have, if you don't have him play 10 yards off the ball and he's challenging wide receivers? Same things with James Bradbury. We hoped after, the Minnesota and the Washington game that what you would get is, a Jonathan Gannon who realizes how much talent he has on that side of the ball that wouldn't be afraid to play a more aggressive style defense, But those players they're getting it done and they're having success, in my opinion, despite of how Jonathan Gannon calls defense.
I cannot get with this Jonathan Gannon defense. Week in and week out, it's not just a job, it's an adventure.
Well, listen, I get all that, and we can sit here and criticize him every week. But, Seth, you've been in locker rooms. You see a team's personality. What's different about this team's personality that you can see? Blending everything, the coaching staff, the caliber of player they have.
In a situation like this, I've been on 2 teams that's gotten off the starts like this. When I was in Green Bay and when I was in Denver. And the thing that I will tell you is the mindset is the next game. Because it's real easy to kind of get caught up in the fact that, we're undefeated. We've got all of these games that we've won, and we're now the hunted rather than the hunter. It's easy for that to happen. But that's a message that has to be preached across the line. And then it has to come from the head coach. It has to come from the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, but the leaders on the football team have got to preach the same thing. See, I thought that this would be somewhat of a bounce-back game for this team, if you will, when you consider how bad they played last week, even though they won, because it looked just like the first game against the Lions, and then you turn around and you come back and you destroy Minnesota. You play the way you played against the Arizona last week, and then you come back in the whole first half, you just completely dominate, this Dallas Cowboys team. I just think that it's a mindset that starts with the head coach, that goes down to the leaders on the team, and Jalen Hurts last week. Man, I hate 5-0. I hate that we even got to talk about it. Well, guess what, Jalen? You're going to have to talk about 6-0. So how you going to deal with that, after you come back rested up after a bye week?
I get it, and I know you love pressure. Now, pressure helps your secondary. But in this game, their secondary in the first half was lights out. They were flying all over the place without a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They were making every play they needed to make.
Well, there's a correlation. There's a correlation because there's times where you have to bring pressure and there's a time where you got to back off, okay? But you don't have to concede. You don't have to concede as much real estate as we concede sometimes. Like if you're in zone and you want to bail your corners, you don't have to line them up off the ball 10 yards. That's an automatic for veteran quarterbacks to say, hey, guess what? I can get the speed out. I can get the stop route right now. But if I line up and press coverage and I bail on the snap, I can still get to where I need to get to with good vision and still be in a position, to play the routes that they may adjust to. But at the same time, it doesn't always have to be about pressure. And you always hear me say, I love the blitz. Well, guess what? I do. Because I love to pressure quarterbacks and speed up their clock and make them make, quick, hasty decisions. But you can also challenge wide receivers in coverage as well, instead of just giving up so much real estate that you give them an easy pass or easy option. Just challenge them sometime. Get up as a corner and move back. Line up inside when you're supposed to be outside on the snap of the ball. Pop outside. Because everything that the quarterbacks are reading, they're reading pre-snap. The adjustments, the dual routes that wide receivers have, they're dual routes based upon where you're lined up pre-snap. So the more you move around, the more you move back and up, in and out, bail, play from off and come up, the more you create those kinds of things for offenses to have to worry about, the more you can create chaos and pressure on quarterbacks.
One of the beauties about this secondary is the luxury. they can cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
Yes.
And I'm talking corner to corner, and I'm talking about even when backups come in. That's a mindset that goes back to training camp. You know, when you're back in that backfield and you see a Darius Slay on one side, they bring in a James Bradbury, you bring in a C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you have a Marcus Epps who's improved tremendously from last year. You have Avonte Maddox. And when you look at 5 DBs like that, and we've watched it now for 5 games, how quickly they can cover and get in there and defend passes. You don't see that on an everyday basis across the National Football League. A lot of DBs will concede that underneath stuff and just hope to make the tackle. These guys are coming up and challenging every chance they get.
It's really impressive. And Cooper Rush, that they made a big stink about him being undefeated as a starter with no interceptions. And he comes in this game, and they completely took him out of his element. They had to really help him in the second half for him to survive in this game. He was outclassed by this team in the first half. His girlfriend, he didn't want her to come. She flies in.
I see why he didn't want her to come.
She flies. First loss in front of the girlfriend.
Well, listen, so this week on my show, I had Merrill Reese and Brad Sham, who actually is the voice of the Dallas Cowboys radio, that does the same thing that Merrill does. And one of my questions to him, I said, Brad, you know, will Sunday, you know, I said, because this rivalry, you know, is unlike anything that he's ever seen. And to be on the big stage, Sunday Night Football,
in Philly,
Eagles, Cowboys in Philadelphia. I said, you know, will the stage be too big for him? Will the lights be? Oh no, he already won the game on Monday Night Football. Obviously, you know, tonight was too big for him because I mean he looked like he just wanted to take his ball, fold up his football pants, and go home in the first half.
He settled in the second half
because they let him.
They let him settle in. You know, and let him make a game of it a lot closer than it should have been. But lo and behold, the defense made some plays, okay? You know, Brandon Graham gets in there, hits his arm on that 3rd interception. Before that, Bradbury comes up and deflects a pass and is picked off. So you know, despite that guy on defense calling the shots, these guys across the board stepped up and made plays when they had to.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so here we are, folks, 6-0, and it doesn't look like there's a loss coming for a really long time. I just like this city right now. Is this Philadelphia? Are we living in Philadelphia right now?
When was the last time we had a weekend like this in Philadelphia?
I mean, the baseball team could go to the World Series, for crying out loud. This team could be 10-0 before we look up. I mean,
and the Flyers, at least for the first weekend, are respectable again.
Nobody knew that they won their first 2 games.
Flyers
and Bede's on the field. We can't wait for the Sixers. And Bede's hanging out with A.J. Brown on the field.
Are you counting exhibition games?
Hey, man, a win is a win.
What the heck is going on in this city? Crying out loud. All right, here's the deal. You know, we have Lane Johnson as part of the show, but Lane got a little banged up today, so we're not going to be able to have Lane with us. But we've got all kinds of things. We're going to be into the wee hours of the night on this show, baby. We're going to keep going and going and going. We have John McMullen going to join us, Devin Caney with the Diamond Debate. That's coming up right now. You're watching us on 6abc.com, hopefully, or the YouTube JAKIB Media Sports Network. This is the Pond Lehocky Eagles postgame show. Mike, that's D. Gunn, and that's Seth Joyner, and we're back after this.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth